you're listening to the Neil Lamptey Show. My name's Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
All right, mate.
And by Neil.
Hello.
And as tempted as we were to just put last week's podcast on again, we've decided to just have the same conversation and just change the names. So another very, very dull... do you know what? Not actually dull. Dull in the sense that it's annoying that we keep having the same thing happen over and over again. But it was the same again. So let's try and think of specific moments of the week. Paul, where would you start us?
The transfer window, which still was within the last week, and that point of, we really need a striker. We really need a striker. Oh, we've let our top leading goals. Oh, okay. We're not going to get a striker. We're going to sign a kid from Chelsea, who not even Chelsea know who the hell he is. Oh, and we signed that old guy. Not really old. That guy from Reading.
29.
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't know what to... He's one of those players I'm aware has existed for a long time, but I don't think I've ever been aware of what he does.
Yeah, me too.
Or what he is. So it's not even like, oh, I'm expecting this anything really. And he was all right on Saturday. So, I think it's almost one of those players who's really hard to sort of comment on, because you could clearly see that he just wasn't fit. But it was interesting the fact that Reading are in freefall and they weren't even bothering with him. So, it was just a bit of an odd one. Getting rid of JCH wasn't. Well, as I said, all the way through the season, go back to the early pods, I was just a bit. I didn't quite understand why we signed him, but I'm also a bit baffled on why we let him go as well.
I wonder what he thought about the whole thing.
It's just like, if you look at the three signings, three of the signs we were involved with, JCH we signed in the summer. He played quite a bit, didn't he?
Yeah.
And then we've released him. Agogo we signed in the summer, and we've released him. David Mellor Malia, however you pronounce it, signed for Reading.
David Mellor.
Yeah.
And they've released, they've got rid of him, and it's just odd. Like, all these signings, they haven't even got going at their new clubs, let alone. But JCH, I think. He must know that he's not first choice. It was a bit of an odd signing because we went out and then bought two new players, or two similar players to him straight away. I mean, all to power to him for actually sort of, going and not taking the easy route would have been to stay at Cov to the rest of the season, wouldn't it? It's a bit like Agogo. Agogo signed a 3-year contract. It would have been very easy for them both to sit out the rest of the season. And the fact they've gone to a lower sort of place team and are prepared to fight for it, good on them.
Good on them indeed. We wish them obviously all the best. Neil, your moment of the week.
Mine is transfer window related as well. I guess it's mainly Doyle being let go, leaving, whatever you want to say. But I guess it was Tony went as well, JCH went, and I just look at the squad now, and I kind of, it's that sort of tipping point between the summer where we lost a couple of people from the promotion team, so which we had to deal with, McNulty being the key one, to now not really having any sense of that team left anymore, which to me is a little bit upsetting. I don't know quite why that sort of unit has been discarded. I said discarded. I'm guessing that's what's happened with Robbins. He's kind of messed about with it quite a bit now, so it just doesn't seem very familiar anymore to me. So that was my moment of the week, really. So Doyle being allowed to leave, which I thought was a bit sudden. I didn't expect it. I didn't think it was necessary either. I still think Doyle has something to offer. I think he was ousted from the team pretty quick, if you ask me, to be honest. I think he was still playing pretty well this year. And yeah, moment is just, that team that I loved so much last year is no more, pretty much. So we're just going to have to try and build something else.
It's the transfer window just felt so ruthless with the players going out. Like it was... especially when you see the replacements, and you sort of think, how am I supposed to be gripped by these people? Because there's so much that you look for in a football team. But one of the biggest things that I look for, especially, is kind of connections and spirit, and just what do I get a sense from the team that something's really starting to click? Because
as far as I'm concerned, you can't buy that. That's not bought. That's something that's garnered over time, and you're very lucky if that happens. And that happened to us last year. So my ideal would have been to build upon that and find a way to kind of, harness all that good feeling that they had and do a Luton almost, or just continue that on throughout the course of this season. But I just feel like the signings he's made both in the summer and to this point just have really kind of put a dent in some key areas of that team. And
I think we'll get on. Might get onto this and might not. A lot of people are like, this season's all about consideration and build for next season, which is fine. But there doesn't seem to be any sort of solid base that we're building on top of.
Exactly.
We've brought in a couple more. I mean, it's a bit like he made this comment about the fact that he's going to, when Kelly's fit, he's going to play both him and Mailer. And it's like, well, you didn't play Kelly and Doyle at any point this season. So, and then he didn't really play Tony Andrew, and he brought Bright in, and now we're playing 4-2-3-1 with Bright playing as a support. And he's just like, well, why didn't you give Andrew like the 5 games? Why are you suddenly changing the system again? Because of this player you brought in, but you had a player who could play that role. You just didn't play them. It just seems all the signings just seem quite arbitrary. They don't. There doesn't seem to be like this is his 4th transfer window. I don't think we're still yet quite sure what system we're trying to play and how we're trying to score goals. Because all the Connor Chaplin things. Oh, we need a target man. We need a target man. And it's like, okay, well, why haven't we bought? Why? We might have tried to bring one in, but it doesn't. With all the players who that we missed out on, none of them appear to be strikers. The other guy was Carl Edwards from West Brom, who is another winger. It just seems very odd. The whole transfer policy. I know it's like, we're going for young players, but it's just you don't want 20 players who are all under the age of 22 who have never played. Got no league pedigree. It just doesn't. Wow. That doesn't get you promoted. That gets you into a position where you've got loads of kids who are trying weird and wonderful things, but there's not a way to get out of this division.
I don't know whether it's confirmation bias because we'd been saying it for years, and then we had a level of success last season, and then you go back and look for it. But I don't think it is. I don't think it's a coincidence that last summer we signed a load of players who were sort of between 25 and 29, prime of their career at a reasonable level, and we looked like a team of experienced players that weren't carrying terribly tired legs, the Rob McDonalds of this world. And that now I saw at the weekend, I think at one point the average age of the team was it 21? Which is ludicrously young even for us who have been very used to having average ages of 23 or around about that mark. 21 as an average is absolutely bonkers, and in some ways it's promising because obviously you want a team of young players coming through, but not at the expense of what your week in week out performances, which is ultimately I think is what it is, isn't it?
It just feels too.
Much
impulsive and too fresh, and it's like, exactly. It just doesn't strike me as kind of having much method behind it. I kind of, my analogy. It's not even an analogy; it's a statement that is a bunch of players, and I always go to that where I don't see any sort of connection or cohesion amongst the group, and I've never been one to be too worried about bringing loan players in if they're there to supplement what seems to be quite a good core. So I thought our loan players under Tony Mowbray he did well. I mean, he supplemented some really strong players with insanely good attacking loan players.
Yeah,
and what we ended up, they were the top level, and they're the ones you bring in.
Yeah.
What I feel we've done now is just we had this working unit, which for whatever reason Robbins has essentially given up on. I don't think he fancies it anymore. He's sacked off a few of those. A few have just, he can't even get close to the squad, and he's replaced them with, as far as I can tell, similar or inferior players. It's early to say for a lot of them. I'm not going to throw him under the bus at this point, but I just think, and it's almost other people's inferior players rather than what was working for us. there's no one way to create a football team, and there's nothing to say that this won't work out, because there is some talent there. But I had my preference for how I wanted the season to go in terms of how I wanted to build a team. That hasn't happened, so I'm left pretty much with my finger in the air, just hoping that something goes right for us.
What worries me is it reminds me, in the way that the squad we've got now, reminds me of the year we got relegated from the Championship, where we had lots of really young players, but we didn't have a guaranteed centre forward who was going to get us goals. Well, we did, but then we sold Jukovic.
Yeah.
And then you were left with Alex Nimley, and you were like, well, we know this isn't going to work. And then in midfield, we brought in Ollie Norwood, who was a good player, but it was a case of that isn't the player that we need. And as you say, you looked at the second half. Once Mailer went off in the second half, they were all kids. There was no, and even the sort of senior pros like Jordan Willis, I know he's been captain, but he's not really a leader of men. And you just looked and you went, there's no one here who's taking the right responsibility. There's no one making the right decision. You could sort of see that they didn't quite know how to manage. And I know people are going, oh, we need to embrace this young side. And that's fine up to a point. But the problem is, it's just there are times where you need senior players. And as I said, for me, the worry is it's sort of when they're at that age, it can become a habit of winning. Losing becomes a habit. Also, the fact that because quite a lot of them aren't our players, and quite a few of the players who are our players are out of contract, it does worry me as well. It gets to the point where does sometimes it can be a bit easy to switch off a little bit or take the easy option because, we're losing. And the weird thing about Saturday was I thought Saturday was probably the first time for a while. I thought quite a few players had individually, and the better players like Luke Thomas and Sterling had probably their worst games for a while. Don't know what Neil thought. I'd probably go into that. But even the players who've been really good this season were beginning to have their sort of a little bit of a downturn, which again, we discussed, it just happens with younger players. It's just a natural thing.
I want to, just for the sake of completeness and just because it tickled me, finish off with my moment of the week, and then I'm going to kick it over to Neil to pick up from the Gillingham game. But we were talking about Doyle. Doyle made his first start for Notts County on Saturday. I think he started. What he definitely did do, though, was what? Named man of the match, obviously.
Yeah.
The Doyle PR team kicked straight in at Notts County there. My guess would be that somebody got a hat-trick, that a keeper saved 2 penalties. Doyle man of the match. I can only imagine it's written into his contract, perhaps, that that he has to be man of the match a certain number of times. It was brilliant reading that. You're just like, oh Jesus! It just doesn't matter where he is, does it?
He knows other players, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He just what do the fans want? Yeah, I know what they want. I'm going to do that.
Yeah. So, how much? I was going to say how much did we miss him on Saturday, but we've not really seen a lot of him over the last few months, have we?
Not really. I still feel we miss him. I'm quite happy to be in the minority on that one. I thought he was having a good season. Couple of issues, couple of mistakes, and he's suddenly out of the team and out of the club. I think it was a bit abrupt. But anyway, Saturday. I'm also happy to contradict some of my earlier points from this podcast. So I broadly didn't mind Saturday. In terms of certainly first half, I was really interested in it. I was watching it. I was trying to see how it was developing. I thought we were, as far as I'm concerned, clearly the dominant team. I think Paul got it right in the sense where there was lots of sort of individual performances and sort of noteworthy performances, and then from the players who we've been used to having good performances, actually their standards dropped a little bit. So Sterling in particular didn't have anywhere near his best game, but you know these players aren't going to have brilliant games every week, so I'm happy to accept that. But yeah, I can see while I think Robbins has gone a little bit mad recently. Something's gone on. He's losing it a little bit, but probably not medically, but just in terms of like his decisions are baffling me.
He's turning into Emperor Robbins, isn't he?
Yeah, very much. And I don't know whether it's some sort of statement he's trying to make around the players, or he's just trying to jolt things into life, which if that's one of his methods, fine. I'm happy for him to give it a go. It just makes it very hard for us to rationalise it because it doesn't make much sense a lot of the time. But in terms of what he's doing and how he's trying to get the team to play, I'm okay with it. What we've got is a team that is building and actually building from the back. And this isn't. I don't think this is Andy Thorne sterile possession building. There is some method behind it. I think we're moving out quite nicely from the back. We're looking for the gaps. We're not rushing it. We're still playing it backwards if we need to. That doesn't go down well at Coventry most of the time, but I think people are starting to understand it, or at least starting to recognise that that's how we play, so they're dealing with it. I think generally there were some good performances. I was surprised to see Mailer and Westbrook straight into the team. Again, I couldn't work out whether that was totally by design and whether it was enforced or whether it was a statement or whatever it was. It was an interesting selection. I think Mailer came in, showed he's clearly a dominant pro, so he fills the void that would have been left by Doyle or Kelly because he wasn't available. But he was off the pace, and by off the pace I mean his body probably wasn't working at the same speed as his mind wanted it to, so he wasn't really able to kind of adjust position, and he lost the kind of the roll of the ball quite a few times, and you could see by the second half it was time for him to naff off and give someone else a go. Westbrook came into the middle, replacing Bayliss, which I like Westbrook. I'm also quite surprised how someone of his apparent quality hasn't played more this season. He's only just come in. Not that we should be just chucking any young kid in there, but he seems to be totally at ease in the first team. There's no sort of issue with sort of the basics there. He's just focused on how he can influence the game. And I thought he had a very sort of useful game, really.
Would it be harsh to say completely unremarkable? And I don't mean that as an inherent criticism, more as a sort of like a double-edged sword of actually he's come in and not done anything wrong at all, but has hardly stood out. And I guess that in itself is praise of a young breaking into the first team. But I also don't think he's not, and this is very unfair, he's not Tom Bayliss, is he?
He's not, but I would say I did see moments of note. I think they weren't Tom Bayliss. So Tom Bayliss, when he does something good, you're like, fucking hell, this guy just runs 60 yards, and it's a different player. Westbrook, I thought his corners were consistent. Well, that's a weird thing to get excited about, but they were consistent, and they were going into an area which people could work with. I thought his link-up play and just his ability to be in the right place at the right time and keep things moving at a good pace was really quite handy compared to some other people who may have been in that position. So, no, I think it wasn't standout, but it was impressive enough for me to kind of look at and think, I don't mind him being there. And not that I want to see a future without Bayliss, but at some point he's going to disappear, and we'll need someone with some sort of vision or creativity in the middle. And I think there are signs there that Westbrook could potentially be that guy. Early days, of course. Shipley came back in, which I have no problem with Jordan Shipley coming back into the team when that team had Tom Bayliss, Michael Doyle and Liam Kelly, the old midfield. I think a totally fresh midfield with him coming in was asking a lot of him, because I think he revels in familiarity. He likes to work around people. I think he actually connected quite well with Doyle. Doyle telling them off all the time kept him going, because we all know his flaws and his kind of erratic play. That's just who he is. He's not a particularly consistent player, but he's a tenacious player, and he'll keep going. I was quite impressed by his. It wasn't really leadership, but he was trying to assume a role of geeing a few people up who probably. So he gave Bright a few words every now and again, which he probably didn't need, but I thought it was good that he was at least assuming some responsibility there. So, yeah, it was an odd game by Shipley. He didn't play particularly well, but I value tenacity a lot, and I think if you're not the greatest player, the very least you can do is work as hard as you can to at least involve yourself in the game and make up for any errors that you do make. And I think Shipley always gives us that. McCallum came in at left back, and again, I think he looks okay in the first team. I'm still. I don't think he's quite ready yet. I think there's obviously some clear talent based on sort of the age versus the performances he's put in. You sort of think, okay, he's able to do that at that age. He should grow. There are signs for me that he's still a little bit shaky, and his decisions aren't quite there at the moment. So I don't quite know where Robbins is going with that one, because you've obviously got Mason and Brown, the two other alternatives there. Was Mason injured? He was playing recently, and out of nowhere he just wasn't in the squad at all. So I'm guessing he was injured.
Well,
but he likes McCallum.
He really likes McCallum, doesn't
exactly.
he? Yeah.
He's made it absolutely clear that he likes this guy, and I'm sure in training he's probably something very special. And matches are different, so he might grow, and eventually it'll come good. I sense I just sense it's slightly too early for him, but.
I didn't realise until recently that we'd brought him in. I thought I just assumed that he was coming through the academy, but he's a signing, isn't he?
No, didn't know. Okay.
Yeah, he came from someone else. I mean,
he
seems fine. I haven't seen him yet and thought, well, he's significantly better than the others. It seems, and you read some of the things that Robin's saying, and he uses the ball better, and you just, well,
I think he might eventually.
Yeah,
I'm sure he does in training.
He's fine. I mean, he's not. I don't know. I suppose it's just, you brought two senior left backs in. It says a lot about the scouting system that neither of them are good enough that you're playing the complete novice in there. Doesn't quite seem worthwhile. He was fine. I mean,
but Mason is good enough, isn't he?
Mason's fine. I think that's the thing. It's like Mason's fine. He's not wonderful and he's not awful. He's just fine. Almost like the thing you can't say about footballers, isn't it? It's just like he's okay. That's it. He's not amazing and he's not awful. He's just okay.
Well, I've been thinking. I
don't think McCallum's wonderful or. I think the issue with McCallum is like you can tell with about 20 minutes to go, he's always blowing out of his ass. And oppositions are sort of working that out as well, that he's sort of, with 20 minutes to go, they can get at him.
I mean, that has to be an age thing, doesn't it? That's just him getting used to it. I'm happily put that down to the fact he's just growing into what a 90-minute professional game feels like, and over time that will sort itself out. Just to kind of go back on the earlier point, because it's something I've been thinking about a lot recently, and I don't know why, because there's no point thinking about stuff like this, but kind of this notion of being good enough, and also just because a player hasn't shown it for your team, we write them off as a player in entirety. Agogo is a great example of someone who came to us with this great reputation, a player who, by all accounts, was a very strong League One player, but he didn't start his career with us very well, and that defined him, and then he's gone. And as COV fans, we all now look at him and think, well, he's not a good player, that's bad scouting. What I've been worrying about or trying to get my head around is it bad scouting because when he came to you, he was in poor form or he wasn't able to perform, or he made some errors in those early games which you could never forget? Or is that just the way toss of a coin? Is that just the way the dice rolls? And because he could go somewhere else now and still be a good player. Because there's a lot of people are saying it's bad scouting, but not all of them can be bad scouting. We've looked at them, we've seen they're good players, and because it doesn't necessarily work out for some totally unknown reason, does that necessarily mean that the decision to get him in was a bad one? I'm not sure. I'm never too sure.
It all depends on the reason they've let them go. Because one of the things that was said about Agogo was he wasn't the sort of player that he didn't do the role that Robbins wanted him to. And you're like, well, that's got to be down to scouting. It's like, if you've gone in and you want someone to do a particular role, and you've signed them and gone, actually, he's not the player I want, he does something completely different, then it's sort of, well, why did you bring him in then? It's a bit, I suppose it's a bit like the JCH thing. It's like, everyone knew what JCH gave to the club, last summer we had him on loan. You watch this season, you're like, yeah, we knew all this. Why did we sign him? What was the point?
But the point was he did that job, which nobody else could do. That's the point, isn't it?
But to some extent, what was that job? I mean, that's the big question over JCH is what was that job?
Mega bastard. That was the job up front. It was an important job coming on in the second half.
But okay, so we've released him and haven't put in another mega bastard.
I know.
So it's just, I don't know. I think it's just my should I go? I just never felt he was given a fair crack of the whip.
That's exactly it.
And I'm not sure if Cov fans do think he was shit. I think he's just one of those players where I think a lot of Cov fans have just accepted the fact that it didn't work out because it was quite an early decision that he wasn't good enough, and then he was just given like really weird sort of cameo sub appearances and then disappeared, wasn't he? But it was just.
To be fair, my reference on that, I say that everybody thought he was rubbish. My reference is just everybody at the football and on social media just talking rubbish most of the time. So there are rational people who look at it in a different way, so not everybody's saying that shit. But, you just get the banal sort of statements of, oh, he's no good. And the worst one is when they get announced at their new club and you get the Cov fans steaming in with their comments, unlucky. Oh, fuck off. Leave him. He's moved now. Let him go.
But it's the same. They're the same people who think this Chelsea lad, who no one's ever seen live, he's a brilliant coup. And you've never seen it. It's like, he could be brilliant. He could be shit. It's just you don't have to go, it's a great signing. You don't know. No one knows. Just say, it's an interesting signing. I hope he comes good, and just leave it at that. Unless Joey's about to say, I've seen him 15 times, seen all of his YouTube videos.
Well, no,
I know what he listens to on Instagram, and he's an amazing footballer.
That really ages you. I know what he listens to on Instagram. Yeah. I was recently working with a Chelsea fan, and a Chelsea fan who goes to games, was, he knows his stuff. And I said to him, and this probably illustrates it reasonably well, I said to him, we've just signed Charlie Wakefield from Hughes. Do you know anything about him? And he said, I've heard his name, but that he couldn't be further away even from like the normal youth team. And I said, he's what's it? It's because our assistant manager is Adi Vivish. And he was like, Adi Vivish. And he'd got a lot to say about him. Like, he knew who he was and whatever else. He'd never heard of Charlie Wakefield. He knew he said he knew the name, but yeah.
Who's quoted as like being the fastest player that Vivish has ever seen?
Yeah,
but is that a thing that's been said?
It was, but did you see what Robin said about it?
No.
Robbins is good for this sometimes. What's it? Is it kind of like droll, dry kind of. I think somebody said to him about Adi Vivish saying that he was the fastest player he'd ever seen, and Robbins just said, yeah, but then he just exaggerates about everything. So I think it might not be that he is the fastest player ever, but
I sense that's probably what's happened. Yeah,
it's good enough to say. I think I'm, guilty of it quite a lot. All he's saying is that he's very, very fast, isn't he? So
making a statement, yeah.
Yeah, fair dues. I thought it amused me what I saw Ed tweet. When he came on in the 93rd minute, I think.
Oh yeah.
I think Ed had said, can he move from Robbins as defenders' legs are often very tired by the 93rd minute? Bring him on with enough time to exploit their weakness.
Context important there, but never mind. Yeah.
Hardly an opportunity to judge him on Saturday, was it?
Yeah. Although for the sort of the 30 seconds we did see, he had a nice touch. That's promising. Hey, let's move on.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about Bright. Ina Bakari. Best game, I would say, for us. I thought he's another maniac. I have no idea where he's playing. I don't think he does either. He just does what he likes, and I think Robbins is absolutely happy to allow him. I'm not entirely sure that's the best approach.
Him and Robbins are probably quite good bedfellows in a kind of don't ask, don't tell sort of way in his positioning. Like, Robbins hasn't told him where to go, and Bright wouldn't listen even if he did. So it's fine.
From game one, he's been like that, hasn't he? Like put him on the left.
Yeah.
He's wandering. Yeah, he's right back. Okay, let's sort this out. But no, it always worries me because I always worry when players hold on to the ball too long. And by too long, I mean to the point where you think they're going to lose it. Invariably, to this point, he hasn't lost it. He's done something clever. He'll probably get caught out at some point and we'll lose a goal from it. But to this point, he's made late decisions, but he's got himself out of some tricky situations. He's got sticky feet. The ball sticks to him all the time. He's clearly a talented player. He clearly is obvious on the pitch. You notice him. The players are kind of drawn to him, the defenders, because of the fact that he seems to be able to do so much with the ball. People, again, I'm going to generalise, but a lot of people seem to come out criticising him after the match for a very short amount of time, where he was just knackered and he made decisions based on having jelly legs, which isn't good. I mean, you've then got to think we should be looking to take him off as soon as possible. But I wouldn't want to sort of criticise or ignore the fact that he had a really good, influential game for the majority, based on the fact that he got tired at the end and he lost his way a little bit. I think there's some balance there to that, how we're going to judge him.
I don't think it's a problem with him so much as it is a problem, and again, get any old podcast out and pull out a bit from here, is Robbins does that thing, and you can disagree or not, but it's true, where he hasn't got a sort of inbuilt philosophy about how to play football, and he kind of vacillates between different forms. And we were talking about it last week, weren't we? He was saying, actually, I'm trying to play this sort of small players football, and I might go more physical. And then he sells his only physical striker. But he had the opportunity to sign a player that he considered to be of a certain quality that was higher than the players that we'd got, and he seems to not consider at all whether they would fit into what the rest of the team is doing. And when Enabakari was asked about his own favoured position in this week, I think, he said he wants to be very clearly through the middle, playing from deep, driving with the ball forward into the box. And the best player that we have at the club is Tom Bayliss, who already does a stellar job of that. And you would think that... I think Enabakari has been very, very good. I think Enabakari has been better than most... I think he's been better than most people think he's been. But I don't see what we're trying to do when he's in the team. He's a very specific player. He's not a midfielder like Bayliss, and Bayliss is so brilliant because Bayliss offers defensive qualities that allow him to play in central midfield and also has that thrust to take the ball forward. But I'm not sure you can really play Enabakari through the middle with Bayliss behind him, because I think they probably want to make the same sort of ball-carrying runs, and you'd almost waste Bayliss by telling him to be restricted behind him. But even still, who is Enabakari releasing the ball to, and when? And does that make sense?
Totally.
I don't see where it's going. If it was that he was playing like in a 4-3-3 with... I always go back to Shinji Okazaki because I love him. But if he was playing with a striker who was sort of, creating space and doing sort of workhorsey type stuff, and then he'd got like Jody Jones, for example, and even Luke Thomas maybe, and coming in from wide and trying to shoot from angles and whatever else. Like if there was some plan there, it'd all make sense. But instead, what's happened is he's just gone, good player, throw in team. And then all of the stuff of Bakayoko missing 2 absolutely gilt-edged chances. There's probably a thing of him being one shot for confidence, but secondly is kind of the whole thing is chaos, isn't it? It sort of nominally is like sort of slick attacking football, but just it must be difficult to prepare for anything because it's all just happening, isn't it, without any plan.
I actually like that. It's just happening. Because I think there's something going on up to a certain point. I think the way they move out from the back, there's a plan there, and I quite like that.
Yeah.
But when obviously it's you guys, we've all spoke about it for months and months. Like when we get into that final third, there's no obvious cohesion. What cemented this for me was because I was feeling nostalgic. I was nostalgic for a few months ago, but I watched the Notts County semi-final.
Yeah.
Just to watch that back, because that was the team that I loved, and just to see how fluid we were as an attack, and how everybody seemed to have a job and a role and a purpose, and they just seemed to move around each other and drop deep when they needed to. That in my mind was the unit that I crave, and that's where you don't necessarily have to have the best players in every single position, but because they work together and they've got this sort of connection, it makes more sense than just, oh, you're a good player, you're a good player, you're a good player, and hopefully if you're all good, something good's going to come out at the end of it.
There was that amazing period last season where and I think it was the thing that cemented us going up. I think, well, the thing that cemented us going up was playing so well in the playoff games, I guess. But the thing that led up to that and us getting into the playoffs was that period of probably 8 or 9 games where the team didn't change every week.
Yeah.
And the question was, at what point will Kyle Reid come on the left? And they just had the opportunity to really cement themselves. And I don't think many of those players on an individual basis, bar clearly McNulty, obviously, because of scoring 28 goals. By the way, did anyone watch that McNulty goals compilation?
From last year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did anyone else remember the fact that he was basically David McGoldrick?
Just easy. Everyone outside the box, curling it in.
I was really surprised at how many of them were like super high quality. I know I can hear Paul cutting in to say bad goalkeeping, but there was it. But apart from McNulty in terms of sort of being standout class for that division, actually, like you say, it wasn't about having the best players. It was about having players who were pretty good, who had got jobs to do, and that had got regular partners, and that were kind of. We weren't particularly sophisticated last season, but that almost played to our benefit, didn't it? You'd got, Doyle kept things ticking over in the middle, and we had a plan. We could get the ball up to Biamu, and that we'd fashion chances for McNulty to hit from. And after a bit, it was like, oh, okay, we found what it is that we're trying to do. But then just this season, it just seems to have just been, well, I'll just chuck him in there, and it might happen or it might not. The world is chaos. I don't like it.
To a point, it looks quite good, and I think for most of the time we do look the dominant team. But how far does that get you?
I think it's all a bit. So I keep thinking about this. Like first half against Gillingham, we were the better side, and we probably had one memorable chance. You watch the highlights, and Gillingham had 3. Second half, I thought Gillingham were probably a bit more in our half than they've been in the first half. And, we had the better chances in the second half. I get the feeling there's just quite a lot of times in this division playing against the team we're playing against, they're quite happy for us to have the ball in midfield and at the defence because they just basically defend the 18-yard box.
Yeah, that's so.
And it does look good, but it's not good because we're pulling teams apart and we're actually creating decent chances. It just looks good because the opposition aren't trying their damnedest to stop us. And I thought Bright was really good first half. Second half, I thought he was quiet, apart from the 2 charging runs, which one created the goal and one created another chance. I think he is just another player who you can see isn't quite match fit. That's not, that's just a thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
he just hasn't really played. It's not a criticism. It's
he's 20 years old, isn't he? With very little overall game experience behind him.
And you can see in the first half, he's everywhere, and he's burning energy that he doesn't need to use because he wants to be involved all the time. That's fine, but after about 60 minutes, you can see that he's knackered, and then by the time he should have gone off after he created the goal. That was it. You could see that he was gone. I don't blame him for being completely knackered. I blame Robbins for leaving him on the pitch when he was clearly beyond tired. The issue is, once we'd missed that second chance from the Bakayoko chance, you were sat there going, okay, how long is it before Gillingham score? And that's my issue at the moment, is I don't think we're particularly a bad side. I think we're just a team that's losing or not winning. And that they can be 2 different things. And again, it's sort of the difference between last season and this season is the team that got us promoted, that spirit, and also that Ed sort of made reference to like the unity that the fans had with the players. I think that unity's gone. I don't know about anyone else. I don't feel particularly engaged with many of the players. Even the player. I quite like Luke Thomas, but not particularly engaged with Luke Thomas because I know he's not going to be here. I'm quite like Sterling. He's a bit of an odd fish. He's a bit, there's not a lot of charisma going on. He's not particularly a lovable type player, is he? He's clearly very good, but you're not. he's not Bayless. He's not someone you actually.
What are you
It's
talking
important,
about?
isn't it?
Sorry.
Go on, Neil. Go on.
There are two different points there. I want to hear Joey's. It was, what are you talking about?
Just a character assassination of an 18-year-old.
No, it's not a character. It's just like. But we made this comment last week when we went 2-0 down at Blackpool. There was no atmosphere because what the atmosphere that we built up last season, the actual sort of the Mickey Doyle song, the actual sort of connection you had with the players. There isn't much connection with this team at the moment. Because it just feels like each week it's just a completely different set of players. The loan players are brought in are just another bunch of we know that they're sort of short-term loans. Last season, do we only have one loan player or do we have none? And I'm not anti-loans. I'm just...
No, I know what you mean, though.
The connection... Last season we had a connection. This season that connection's sort of gone. It just feels like it's a bit odd season. I said this on Twitter yesterday. I find it's a really hard season. Even first half against Chillingham, we played all right up to a certain point being the penalty box. We don't score goals at home. I know it's a sort of, you could say, it's just a holding season. We've just got promoted. What are people expecting? But I'm just a bit fed up with this. This season's been really sort of, it's just a drudge. Absolute drudge. It's not drudge as in like the football's awful, but it's like we've only scored twice. And only 2 times have we scored twice at home. So even going to the home matches, you know that we're not going to score many. And it's, we create all these chances. Yeah, but the strikers are all shit. Like Bakayoko's miss, both of them, the one that even led to the goal, is a terrible miss.
Yeah, it's
hard. And I know because we had a thing after, and you're like, they can't keep missing these chances. And it's like, well, they can because they fucking are. And it's not just a case of, Chaplin got dropped, no one batted an eyelid. Top goal scorer, no one batted an eyelid. Second top goal scorer sold. A lot of people are like, that's good. And you're like, so the 2 players who got us goals, they're not playing. One of them can't play. No one's that bothered. I had no one go, wish Chaplin had started. Bakayoko's come in, missed it to 2 sitters. Hawula had another Hawula game, not sure what he's doing. And you're just like, this is just, I don't know, I just finding it difficult at the moment, and I think Neil's sort of right into a sense. So it's not all doom and gloom, but there's also nothing to be that excited about either, because I'm going to watch Bright. I know he's going to frustrate me. I think he's an interesting player, but I just feel like we're just playing him so Wolves can loan him out to a Championship club next season. He's another player who it feels like he's there for. There's too many players at the club at the moment, in my opinion, who are there for them, not for the football club. Last season, I thought there were a lot of people who were there for the football club as well.
Yeah.
And that's my concern going into the last 15 games, is how many of them are actually that bothered what happens. And if we lose, it doesn't affect them. It doesn't affect them at all. And I think that's, again, against Gillingham, as well as we played, we still conceded an absolute fucking sitter in the last minute by just awful play. It's like, I'm sorry, I know everyone loves Willis. I'm sorry, that you got to call that was a shit goal to concede, and he had a shit game because he just kept giving the ball away. And it's like, but everyone's going, one mistake, and it's like, it wasn't one mistake. He had a bad game all game. He kept giving the ball away or kicking out our play, and it's like, if we're accepting that, if that's the level he's allowed to play at, then we're in deep trouble.
Right, I think we should move this on unless we've got anything that we're desperate to talk about that we've not already covered.
No, let's move.
Let's make a move. Okay, so Dom's here to talk about the Rochdale game on Saturday, and then we'll finish up with just a few Twitter questions, and that'll be that. Hi, Dom.
Hiya.
Rochdale on Saturday then. What can you tell us about them?
Yeah, so basically after a couple of seasons of really challenging for the playoffs and looking like a club on the up, doing things kind of differently, Keith Hill seeming to really get the best out of them, like sort of Accrington, but slightly bigger than that. They struggled the past couple of seasons. They took a final day goal quite late on, and a result to go in their favour to stay up last season, and this season they're just about above the relegation zone, but there's sort of a few memories of discontent. It's just feeling around the club that they've lost a bit of momentum over the past couple of years. A few key players have been lost in their system in Jamie Allen and Matty Lund, both in central midfield, and it's sort of like I said, there's just a sense of a loss of momentum there. Although after sort of poor run sort of in December, they seem to be picking up a little bit, a couple of decent signings. In January, Ethan the Bankslandel, unknown from Wolves, looks to be a good signing for them in central defence after they lost Harrison McGahey to Scunthorpe. But it's still all about Ian Henderson at the moment. The guy's an absolute phenomenon. He scored at least 10 goals in his past 6 seasons for Rochdale, which is incredible. He's also a very good source of assists. If you add his goals and assists together, thus far this season, it's 20, which is one of the best in the division.
Yeah.
It's second best. I mean, to have a player like that is someone who is not really talked about outside of Rochdale. I mean, even like when people are talking about the best players in League One, no one really talks about Ian Henderson. Sort of quite an interesting playing style where he's somewhere between a winger, an attacking midfielder, and a striker. He's physical, but he's very good technically. Got a good touch for him. Got some very good goals in his locker. It's just an all-round threat and someone's going to be difficult to contain.
What happened to the young lads? So Rochdale are a club that I know slightly more about than some of the other ones because of being in the northwest. What happened to the wee boy that was on the? Was he in a cup game recently? About sort of 15, 16 years old. Has he kicked on at all, or I suppose it's been very little time?
Well, I think the thing about Rochdale is that Keith Hill isn't scared to blood youngsters at a very young age. I think each of the past 3 seasons they've given debuts to 15, 16-year-olds. So they've got Dan Adshead and Aaron Morley in central midfield, who are both 17 at the moment and made their debuts around the age of 16. I think Morley made his debut at 15. And then at right back, their backup right back just turned 16, called Luke Matheson, who they had to get permission from his school to play him inside term time. So they seem to have quite a good youth academy. Plus, Keith Hill is very willing to play youngsters if he thinks they're ready.
What are you expecting in terms of setup from them? So is Calvin Andrew in their first team at the moment? Are they expected to play largely through him?
Yeah, I suppose the thing with Rochdale and Keith Hill is they're kind of one of the most difficult teams to predict what kind of lineup and formation they're going to pick. Keith Hill, his biggest strength and his biggest weakness is kind of the same thing, where he likes to tweak the team, trying to come up with a surprise for the opposition. Last week when they took on when they took on Walsall, it was Calvin Andrew up front, and then sort of a line of attacking midfielders involving Ian Henderson and Rory Holden, who they signed on from Bristol City. Ethan Hamilton, who's come in from Manchester United and scored 2 absolutely brilliant goals in recent weeks from range, and a couple of others. So it's sort of a 4-1 setup without a real left back. But I wouldn't be surprised if Keith Hill changed it up. I mean, as we saw at the Rico early in the season, the first half was pretty much one-way traffic for us, where they played a diamond formation and it left so much space down the flanks for us to exploit. But we didn't score a goal in our typical fashion. And in the second half, Keith Hill changed things up, played a long ball over Brandon Mason's head, got him behind, took the lead, and then completely shut up shop. At their best, Rochdale sort of very good, sort of mixing up between being quite physical and cynical, but also moving the ball around well and getting into dangerous positions. So that can be a very awkward side to play against. Although this season their home form has been relatively poor. They've won just 4 games at home this season.
Finally, just what would you do in terms of Carve's forwards this week?
On Saturday, I was really annoyed with Brighton Bakari. I mean, he was absolutely instrumental in scoring the goal, and there was a couple of very good runs which caught the eye. But I just thought the way he sort of gave up. I know he looked injured for the final sort of 10, 15 minutes, but there was just one point where a ball was passed for him, and he just wasn't interested in receiving it all. And even if you're injured, you got to look like you're interested. You've got to at least make a basic effort, which I thought was poor. But kind of looking back on it, if you look at the players we have at the moment, and I think a couple of players sort of like Luke Thomas, their form seems to have dipped a little bit. Tom Bates is seemingly not fully fit at the moment. I think you kind of got to try and tease the best out of Enan Bakari. I'd play him sat bang in the centre as a sort of as a number 10, and try and get players around him. I thought as well, even though Bakayoko really had two big misses on Saturday, the first in the build-up to Enan Bakari's goal, and then that miss that would have made it 2-0. At least compared to Hawula, he had chances to miss, so maybe that's something to try again, and hopefully he gets it right this time. So let's give Bakayoko a go. Let's give Enan Bakari a go, and let's try and be just generally more solid. Hopefully Liam Kelly's back fit.
Let's see how it looks on Saturday then. Right, thanks, Dom.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Dom. Right, so let's see if we've got some questions on Twitter then. I'm going to repurpose a question from Steve Perdomo at Sky Blue Steve. Paul, could you possibly manage a whole Eccles cake, he says.
Definitely.
An Eccles cake actually isn't all that big, is it?
I think that was his point. I think this comes on to a discussion about whether or not the fact that we've bought strikers and they don't score goals is a case of, have we just signed strikers who don't score goals? And you made some point about the fact that it isn't Robin's fault that our strikers don't score goals. And it went from there. But if you buy strikers who don't score goals, don't be surprised when they don't score goals.
Well, I think yes and I think no. One, I think it's unfair to say that Jordi Hawula doesn't score goals, in inverted commas. He's got a history of scoring 10, 13 goals in not full seasons for teams like Bradford and Huddersfield. So I think he has got some League One pedigree. So I don't think on the face of it that's a terrible signing. Where you could blame Robbins is then whacking him out on the left for the entire season to let inferior strikers have a go. But with Bakayoko, yeah, you probably can't really argue with the fact that he has been a signing that was bewildering to start off with. And as much as I am really desperate for everyone to do well, it's hard to imagine a scenario where he comes good, because he just doesn't look like a good footballer to me. I tell you what, actually, I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a second, and I don't know what point I'm making here as usual, but it did annoy me. Is Bakayoko tweeted on Saturday and said, hold my hands up, shouldn't have missed those chances, blah 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 blah. And I, as a sort of like car crash rubbernecker, went on to see the level of abuse that he was getting from people on Twitter. And actually, a load of people had toadied up to him and said, oh, you had a really great game, don't worry about it, and whatever. Yeah, and I was furious.
It should have been met with silence.
Exactly. Well, this is the thing. I really, really desperately don't want anybody to be slagging players off on Twitter. Like, I think that's really insidious, of like reaching out into someone's personal space and being able to insult them while they're having a shit. But don't write to him and be like, yeah, you were brilliant. What sort of nonsense is that? You were awful.
I would judge him if he even took that seriously. I mean, he must know that he did not have a good appearance. So if people are saying that to him, he's got to think, nah, they're a bit strange. If he's looking at it and thinking, oh, maybe I did all right then we've got some problems.
Oh man, but to your point, Paul, you're right. What you do have to say. At what point did Robbins sign off on that decision to spend money on him? But I think that I think irrespective of if he was a League One striker, and you would expect literally any League One striker to score the chances that at least one of the two chances that he had on Saturday, and they were just so tame, weren't they? And I don't know whether you can blame Robbins for that. I just think they should have been goals. And I know that one ultimately bounced back out and was put back in by Enna Bakari, but that doesn't excuse it. And I agree with you about it's kind of chicken and egg, but I don't think we have looked. I think the problem hasn't been. Well, you can argue a deeper point that I argued earlier about the philosophy, but I don't think that actually counters the fact that we could have scored a lot more goals, couldn't we?
But it goes back to that thing, wasn't it? A while ago there was a thing on Twitter. It's like we've sold our top goal scorers left at the end of each season for the last 8 seasons or whatever.
Is that true? I missed that.
But the thing is, you look at it and it's like, well, McNulty left last season because he scored 28 goals and went to the Championship. The year before that, the top goal scorer was... I remember the top goal scorer was the year we got relegated. Someone shit.
Thomas?
Probably. Was it George Thomas?
I don't know.
I think it probably was George Thomas on about 7 goals, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, well, he went to the Premier League. The year before that was Adam Armstrong. Oh, well, he was Premier League loan. And it's like the year before that was Dominic Sam. You keep going back, and it's like the reason we don't, A, because they're normally loan signings, and B, the reason they're our top goal scorer is normally because they're probably our best player, who are, go back to Liam Clark and Callum Wilson. You're like, well, yeah, because both of them left to bigger and better things. It's just that's what happens if you've got someone who scores lots of goals. The problem is this season's the first time, it's the relegation season, where we've got League One strikers. We haven't bought in got a striker from a higher division. We spent nearly £1 million on League One strikers. That's what we've got. We've got League One strikers, and they're not scoring goals. But I say even Hawula was only I think his best season was 9.
No,
that's what they are.
That's not right.
In the league, I think it's 9.
Well, okay. Anyway, little quiz in the middle of this. I know that this is an inappropriate time to have a quiz, but I've just had a look at something, and I'm going to see whether you can get it. Goal scorers in the 2016-17 season. I want you to name the top 3 goal scorers and how many goals. In fact, let's say how many league goals did they all score?
What years again?
This is 2016.
Year we got relegated.
Year we got relegated.
Daniel Agai?
Daniel Agai, no. He, if you were just taking it on league goals, then he would be in joint second, but he didn't score as many in total as 2 other players.
I'm still saying Thomas with
George
10.
George Thomas got 9 in total. He got 5 league goals that season. He was, and as well, he was the only player that got 5 league goals that season, which might have been a contributing factor to us going down. Yeah.
Oh, God. I've no idea. Bevan?
No, Bevan got 2.
Bevan got 2 goals.
1, 2.
He got 3 in total. He got 2 in the league. To put the listeners out of their misery,
Andre Wright.
Andre Wright got 2 in total. It was Marvin Sordal, who left in January, who got 7 in total and got 4 in the league, and Jordan Willis got 3 in the league and 5 in total.
Tragic.
Making him our 3rd top scorer that season.
That's amazing.
Marcus Tudguy got 4 in total, all in the league.
So how did we get relegated?
Yeah, I know. I always wondered how we got relegated that year.
Yeah.
So the mystery's been solved at last.
Yeah.
It's all in the numbers. Oh.
Good job we've got such a plethora of goal scorers this season then, eh?
Yeah. Well, it's, on one of the websites I was looking at, it's got the number of goals, their percent, and so Connor Chaplin scored 5 away from home, which is quite a high percentage of our away goals. And then you look at the goal scorers at the Rico this season. I think Chaplin's got 2 at the Rico. Bakayoko's got 1, which was the penalty. I think Hawula's got 3 at the Rico, which puts him as the top goal scorer at the Rico this season.
Wow.
I mean, yeah. And again, wonder why going to home games isn't that exciting. Hawula's got 3.
I'm looking through. I'm not sure there's any other questions worth asking. It's been a really disappointing week from COF fans.
They let us down big time.
Question from Richo. I'm going to throw this to Neil. Blah, 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 blah. Oh no, that's not what I was expecting it to be. No, fuck it. I think we're done. I think everyone's had enough, haven't they? So yeah, thank you to Paul.
Oh yay! Going to Rochdale at the weekend.
I mean, I'm actually going to a game. It'll only be my third game this season that I've been to, so I am actually quite excited. But that's different to being excited about the game. Neil, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to be back.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, nice to speak to you.
Yeah, bye.